All right, take it away, Katie and Katina.
Thank you, Arlen.
So my name is Katie Fernandez, and I am the Senior Program Coordinator at Teach for Chicago Journalism at Medill here at Northwestern. I myself taught journalism for 13 years in Chicago Public High School. I advised yearbook and our student news website. And now, as working with Teach for Chicago Journalism, what we are focused on is supporting and expanding journalism throughout Chicago. We do that in a number of ways. We have some after-school programs we've helped start. We do in-school curriculum support. We are the new home of the Scholastic Press Association of Chicago. And we also offer teacher training in the summer, and we have a speakers bureau with 60 plus individuals from the media profession who are all willing to speak to high school students.
And I'm Katina Paron, manager for Teach for Chicago Journalism. My background is that I've been working with teen journalists for almost 30 years now in a variety of different capacities, some in-school based, some out-of-school based, really helping young people understand the power of their voices through journalism and helping professional news organizations understand why they need to publish young people's voices and stories and include young people as part of their audience and their community. As Katie said, our goal through Teach for Chicago is really to help support and expand journalism in Chicago schools. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about what some of the principles, no pun intended, what some of the principles are that we use when we're talking about journalism as a way to encourage you all to have or start journalism programs in your schools. And some of you may already have some type of journalism program. I can't actually see the chat, so I don't know if you've typed that in there, but we'd love to hear more about if you have a program, what stages is it in? What are you looking for? Why the program is kind of helpful for your school community? Feel free to put that in the chat and we can have that conversation. So we already did that one, so we'll start off over here talking about the ecosystem. So the idea here is that the newspaper ecosystem, this is a national chart, really over the last several years has shrunk. And as you can see, between national newspapers, metro daily papers, and non-dailies and weekly, there are probably around fewer than 6,000 news organizations in the country right now. That is compared to the 8,000 to 10,000 student media publications. So there are more student journalists in this country right now than there are professional journalists or room in newsrooms for professional journalists, which is saying a lot about the potential for young people and the need for it. And let's talk a little bit about the need for it.
So here at Medill, one of the things that we care a lot about is the local news initiative. And what the local news initiative has taught us is, yes, newsrooms are shrinking, which means that there aren't enough reporters to cover school board meetings, profile the amazing efforts of young people in the community, and a lot of the things that are going on in schools. Unfortunately, since 2005, the country has lost more than 1/4 of its newspapers, and it's on track to lose 1/3 by 2025. So about 7% of the nation's counties, or 211, now have no local newspaper. Locally in Chicago, Chicago Tribune had 800 employees in 2000. They are now down to 200 employees. So the industry has seen a 70% decline in newsroom and employees, unfortunately, since 2006.
And without local news, the research has shown that throughout the community, there's a lot of negative things that how not having local news impacts the community. voter participation declines, pollution poverty increases, there's corruption increases when it comes to contributing to the spread of misinformation, political polarization, and just overall reduced trust in the media, which is important because media is a huge foundation for democracy, as we all know. One note about this idea of contributing to the spread of misinformation. Sometimes this is just, people clicking things on social media that they, think are news, but not. But it also goes to the fact of kind of perceived threat. So during the conversations around critical race theory, and some of those other conversations of having controversial conversations in schools, parents may think that this is what's going on in their school without knowing whether or not it is. So it creates this alarm in parents about what is happening because they read something in the paper. They don't know if it's happening in their school. They're getting alarmed by it without actually know what the situation is in their children's school, which goes to the idea of why high school journalists are so important.
So what's the solution? Student journalism. Of course. That's where high school journalism comes in. It plays such an important role in the community because it covers issues that directly affect 22% of the population, which is the number of young adults or children under the age of 18. So when you have people under 18 covering the community, it really helps fill that gap.
And let's talk, we're using this phrase student media, student publication, but let's talk a little bit about what that might look like.
Our first examples here, we have some award-winning news site publications, very popular form of student voice.
Also, it could be actually newspapers still print out hard copy newspapers. So that's an option. We have online, we have print.
Live streaming. A lot of schools, especially with robust athletic programs, have used their student journalists to live broadcast games.
They could broadcast student government meetings, student board meetings, and they're calling it live. It also could be broadcast, and we have a fun little, I think I have to stop this part of the presentation, but we have, I'm going to show you an example of what a broadcast might look like.
Welcome to episode 2 of Night TV. We're so happy to have you here.
As you can see, we have some spooky decorations that may scare some of our viewers, so viewer discretion is advised.
Alyssa, they're just pumpkins.
What if it was the pumpkins?
Anyways, since the spooky season is approaching, we have some Night TV stories from our night media reporters.
And since we got off to a bit of a rocky start, let's show our first story by reporters Julia Katina and Emma Letzig about some of the cute pets that live in the Prospect classrooms.
Meet Fred, the newest sophisticated resident of Prospect High School.
Sophisticated, get it? Sorry, that's the first time I heard that part and caught it. So broadcast can be a way to do it. Oh, that's going to click out. Hold on, sorry. Next.
Social media. Social media is something that a lot of schools might be hesitant to tackle, but we have seen that student publications have done a wonderful job of not only promoting the great work that their student journalists are doing, but the wonderful things that their school community is doing. And here are some examples of Twitter and Instagram and how these student publications have used it to highlight and grow their program.
And one of the schools Katie is working with, they're not doing our hard copy newspaper. I don't think they have a website yet, but they are using their Instagram as a way to publish their news. So social media can be the product itself and not just a marketing tool.
Yeah, it's a great way to meet the students where they are.
Yeah, and engagement, right? They're already there, like engaging with them there. And podcasts are so hot right now for college students, but as well as high school students. whether, I don't know if they're whatever type of podcast they're listening to, they know it's something that's happening and that they want to do and want to be part of. And the podcast can mean the form could be very different. It could be a recorded piece. It could be a talk show style piece. Here's some podcasts that Jones High School in Chicago have done. So the podcasting is a really popular form. And also it's a great way to engage students. And we'll talk a little bit more about kind of what the students can get out of this program. So first, let's talk about how student media can help your school overall. So the first one, this is really a kind of a huge part of this, is that how student media can civically engage students. We were just talking before this webinar started about the idea that student media is participatory civics. It's civics that students can actually do. They get to ask questions, formulate questions, try to find answers, figure out what's going on. They really learn how the processes of the school and their community works in a way that young people don't get a chance to do that otherwise. Yes, there's student government, but not every student kind of sees themselves in that student government role. So doing something like having a student media program can really help activate young people's kind of connection to the school in a way that civically engages them and makes them more aware and helps them pay more attention to what's going on in the school and what's going on in the world around them.
And how we highlighted a little earlier is student publications can unite the school community on excuse me, on several different things. Having a place for the students to voice their opinions, a place for the students to learn about what is going on in their school community, whether it be the score of a football game to a new club. And it also highlights what's going on outside of the classroom and outside of their school and just their neighborhoods. So it can definitely be a unifying part for the school and parents, staff, things like that.
Katie and our colleague Mike Spites went to a Journalism Education Association conference the other day or last weekend, and they came back talking about like just even the community that is built within the newsroom, how the students feel connected to each other. And when you have students working on behalf of other students, that type of community is even greater than that. So the uniting a school community is a really great way to bring people together and to make them feel at home. It also provides a controlled outlet for student voice. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but the concept here and why I'm using the phrase controlled outlet is that young people are going to say things and think things and do things, whether or not there's a student media outlet for them. So by providing an outlet that it has guardrails, aka the structures of journalism, and an advisor who can help them, that's the controlled part of this. So student media is really a student voice initiative, but doing it under this context, it's not as scary. Again, I'm foreshadowing an upcoming slide. It's not as scary as you might think in terms of giving young people a microphone and an online audience. And we'll talk about this more and probably have some questions on this too.
And it's a wonderful opportunity for student leadership, not just the editors, although the editors learn how to manage a publication, how to manage people, meet deadlines, but also within the paper, students find their own leadership opportunities and they're able to find what they're good at and then spend time really developing that. A student might be really interested in movies. They join the newspaper staff, they learn to write review articles, and now they're combining two things they really love and are able to grow their skills, but also their leadership capabilities, because part of putting their work out for the school community to consume is being a leader and being responsible for what you're publishing.
And there's public recognition too. We have a slide about this in terms of there's so many contests and awards statewide that your student journalists are eligible to be part of and to apply for because of this. And so the idea of elevating kind of the reputation of the school and reputation of individual students through student journalism is very high. It's a very public extracurricular activity. And with that comes this idea that it can be recognized publicly and get accolades from your community, community, and also statewide from your peers.
And a great double whammy here is not only do you have a student publication, you can also meet the new statewide media literacy requirement that recently went into effect that requires all students to have one unit of media literacy before they graduate. And what better way for them not only to learn those skills, but then to put them to work in a publication. So in particular, some of the research that we have seen coming from the civic engagement research group at the University of California, Irvine, they worked particularly with Chicago Public Schools. And what they found was when schools foster student voice, they see a lot of great outcomes. They are able to reduce the number of chronic absences, increase student GPA, and overall, they show that students feel better about their school climate. They feel safer at school, they feel like they're being heard. And a lot of this is done through student publications, allowing students to have an outlet, therefore gives them a voice within their school, an opportunity for administration, teachers, and other peers to recognize these students' opinions or concerns, and it creates a great dialogue, which leads to students being engaged in school, thus coming to school, being engaged in school, and feeling safer in school.
It's every journalism student's favorite class, I have to say. Every time I talk to somebody, this is the class that makes them want to go to school, is their journalism class. And it's because, as Katie mentioned, the student leadership aspect, the ownership over the work they're doing, they find importance in the work they're doing, and they have a harder time doing that in other classes. And they can't see the connection yet between algebra and their life and the kind of what they want to do, but they can see the connection between the journalism that they're actually producing and themselves growing as individuals. So all of this, as Katie says, feeds into them wanting to come to school and improving the student climate and absences. And it's also like journalism is a place for all students, especially students who are part of marginalized communities, students of color. They find this opportunity for student voice really important to them. And it gives them, again, this sense of belonging to the school community and promotes a sense of agency. I use the word ownership a lot, but this idea of agency over their lives is really important. You know, think about being a young person, someone's always telling you what to do, and you feel like you have no direction in it. When you get to pick the news story you want to write about, or the type of story you want to write, or do a podcast on, when you get to come up with the idea and develop it, it creates this whole other sense of like, wait, I can direct things in my own life. Things don't just happen to me. I get to lead them. And it's a really empowering tool that way.
And one of the things I always told my students was, in English class, the teacher's going to read your essay. Your mom might, but that it ends there, right? If your mom puts it on the fridge, that's wonderful. But in student journalism, your work matters, and it's going to be seen by so many more people. And that's where this public recognition comes in. We have, especially in Illinois, we have some great statewide and regional programs. Something that a lot of Illinois high school teachers don't realize is that the IHSA, which is mainly known for organizing sports, also recognizes journalism as an activity. They have sectionals, state competitions. At the school I worked at, journalism was the first school club or sport to compete at the state level, not an athletic event. And it brought a lot of pride among the students, but also within the school. And as a former teacher who was always trying to win over their administrator, bringing home these awards always helped. Whether it be an honorable mention to first place, it was validation that not only was someone listening, but you were doing a good job at it. And that really meant a lot. And I know we have some teachers here from different states. There are also a lot of national contests. The Journalism Education Association is a nationwide. Columbia Scholastic Press Association is based out of New York, but offers the competitions nationwide. And then also the National Scholastic Press Association hosts nationwide contests. So although we have some very unique and strong associations within Illinois, it's definitely something that can not only lead to local, but national recognition and scholarships. Our state in particular, we have iJoy, the Illinois Journalist of the Year, which wins a scholarship and then goes on to compete nationally for the Journalist of the Year. And a lot of other states also have very similar programs and opportunities for scholarship.
And I would say at least two of the things on this list, the Scholastic Press Association of Chicago and the Journalism Education Association, both have awards for administrators and principals. So we honor two. Not that you're going to start a journalism program so you can then get an award, but we recognize the role the administrators take in helping to support journalism at their school. So they are also honored as part of this as well.
Yes.
So we talked about what media does kind of for the school community and for students, but I also want to talk a little bit more about what it does for the individual students. Is it helps, some the statistics of this data is a little older, but from all of our experiences, we've seen that this is still true. That students who work on their high school yearbooks and newspapers get better grades in high school, they earn higher scores on their ACT and SATs, and they get better grades as college freshmen. Journalism prepares young people for life after high school. We're not going to really get into the whole thing of like why everyone wants to hire a journalist. And there's all of these different skills that young people, journalists learn that make them 21st century job skills ready. But there are a lot of different aspects to what they're doing that they can apply in whatever discipline they end up going into, that they'll end up applying to it. So it does a lot individually for the student. It does a lot academically as well.
And thank you to Linda Jones, pointed out that the Illinois Journalism Education Association also has an Administrator of the Year award as well.
Perfect.
So, yes. Career pathways. So a lot of what we've seen with CTE programs or even international baccalaureate programs has been a big focus on career pathways and showing students how what they're learning can be translated into college, but also into their career. Through the Speakers Bureau that we have at Teach for Chicago Journalism, we've been able to connect current media professionals to local classrooms through virtual or in-person presentations. And as you can see on the slide here, these are some of the highlighted experiences that the teachers have had. We've had everyone from on-air talent to behind the scenes producers to reporters who work for the Tribune or Sun-Times to WBEZ share with the classes how they are able to take what they've learned, apply it, and what it's like being a journalist or working in the media profession in the day-to-day life. Frida Brown from Kenwood Academy, she actually works in the CTE broadcast. She's had a lot of professionals come in and talk about the experience behind the camera. You could see Heather Worley from Ogden International High School. She had, it's a Chicago public school, had someone come and talk about something that was very near and dear to the students who lived in Chicago, the Cabrini Green redevelopment, in how their long-term research, they created a feature and published to raise awareness about what was going on. So it's more than just, this is how I interview people and those sort of skills, but also being able to explain what the good that their work is doing and giving the students an idea of how they can do that in the future.
And introducing them to these professionals. The idea of having somebody that they see on their TV every evening, come to their school and talk to them and treat them as equals is this amazing experience for young people. Being able to learning, at some point in our lives, we only think of the careers we know are very limited, right? It's whatever jobs our parents or closest aunts and uncles had. We know teachers, doctors, lawyers. A lot of them have never met a journalist. Most adults have never been interviewed or met a journalist. So for them to have a journalist come into their space and say, oh, you're talking about interviewing? I do interviewing too. Like this, it validates. Teachers love it. It totally validates any lessons teachers give, because they're like, yes, when I tell you to say blank at the end of the interview, like this professional does this every day. This is why I'm telling you to do that. So it really reinforces the teacher's lessons, but creates this kind of connection for the young people that opens up their world, because now their network is bigger. And now they have this sense of like, oh, I can become an adult and have this as a job, or what I'm doing right now is valuable, as Katie says. The career pathways part of student journalism is really, really big.
Yes, if I had $1 for every time a student repeated something that a presenter told them that I had already told them, but now it was true,
Right.
I could have probably retired.
So now it's time for us to talk about the baby elephant in the room. So I'm not going to pretend like journalism is not political and that having a student publication is always easy, right? Journalists are watchdogs. And I know I've heard a lot of pushback from administrators about about this idea of having a media publication or a media program in their school makes them nervous because they're afraid of what the students will write about. And I have to get off this slide now because it's even distracting to me. So hold on. Okay, phew. So when I was talking about this idea of a controlled space for student voice, that's what this is. A lot of times I hear administrators talk about, oh, they're afraid that this is just kind of and I hate this analogy, but I'm going to use it, the inmates running the prison, right? You give a microphone to kids, they're going to do whatever they want, they're going to publish whatever they want, and there's no control over it, and everyone's really afraid of what the kids might say and do. Backstory is that can happen anyways. That's what social media is. That's what the internet is. So we are encouraging you to create a journalism program that puts the journalistic boundaries around it. In journalism, people don't just publish whatever they want to do. If they do, that's not journalism, right? Journalism has a set of ethics that people follow. It has a set of rules. It's a specific process. Just like the scientific method has a specific process, so does journalism. So by using that as a kind of the guardrails for the student voice in your school, you're actually, again, the word control isn't great for this, but you're actually providing them a space where they're learning how professionals make these decisions. And it guarantees against things like libel or defamation. It really helps them explore issues in a way that makes sense, right? Them talking about a student may have a story like, oh, I want to talk about how nobody likes teacher X. That story is not going to fly because that's not good journalism. That's not journalism at all, right? And that's why you have good advisors, right? And you want to think about, I think that might be the next one. That's why you want a well-trained advisor. That's why you're going to select an advisor who you trust, who has both the interests of the students in mind and the interests of the school community in mind, and can help think about this program, this journalism program, as not a foe of the school, but a friend of the school. How can you work together? Now, this isn't saying everything that the students write or produce or publish will be easy on you to hear, but it's all going to be fact-checked and true and verified. That's what their job is. And you have to give them that space to be able to do that. So for here, I talk about how you can help yourself in this way, how you can make your job as an administrator easier in this way. And I think thinking about your student media as a friend and not a foe, having a well-trained advisor. We talked about some resources already. We'll talk about more. And these resources provide training for your students and for the advisor. We really want you to believe, for this to be successful and for this to not be kind of splashed back in your face, you need to really believe in the power of student voice. Really believe that your students are coming from a place, have the potential to learn, or coming from with good intentions. And this is something that values the school community, because the research shows, and we've shown this to you already, that this is something that makes your school a better place and makes students want to learn and want to come to school. Also, you can help yourself by seeking resources for professional development. Again, we'll show you a whole list of resources, and Teach for Chicago journalism at Medill is definitely one of them. But there are lots of resources available for professional development, for constant growth, for editors to keep learning, for reporters to keep learning, and for your advisors to keep learning. And you can also learn about new voices. So new voices, Illinois is a new voices state, passed, I believe, in 2016. It basically gives student journalists the same First Amendment rights as other students in the school. It doesn't give them any special exceptions. It just levels the playing field for them. So there's, we can share resources with everyone after this webinar, or contact us about it. But the idea is, as school administrators, you do have the right to review material before it publishes, but you don't have the right to censor it or get the material, prevent the material from being distributed. So New Voices is a tool that protects your teachers, protects your students, but also protects you. Once you decide not to get involved in the publication, like if you don't read the stories before it goes to press, then you're kind of your liability on the topic is really not involved, because you're not part of the process. But New Voices does give you rules about kind of what steps you're allowed to take to be part of the publication and what steps that you need to step off on, but it's something that would benefit you before you start your student media program.
Yeah. And last thing I was going to say that Katina was saying about New Voices is New Voices really emphasizes student leadership, just something we touched on before. Training your students how to make these difficult decisions in the right manner, and being ready for any feedback that might come from the community. So resources. The best part about Scholastic journalism is the amount of support that is out there. Yes, at Northwestern and Medill here, we Teach for Chicago journalism, which is our main focus is the city of Chicago and the Chicagoland area, which, like I mentioned before, we have a speakers bureau, annual teacher training, and things like that. We are the home for the Scholastic Press Association of Chicago, which has annual conference and contests. And then other local associations, the Northern Illinois Scholastic Press Association, Southern Illinois Scholastic Press Association, JEA, which I mentioned earlier, was the national, and our state Illinois Journalism Education Association. These are all student-focused associations that are there to help the teachers and the students. Chicago Headline Club is made for journalists, but also takes the time to connect journalists to students and teachers and keep them up to date on what's changing, what's new, and how does that affect Scholastic media. You know, 10 years ago, student media wasn't on social media. But more and more journalists said, like, I'm required to have a Twitter at work. I'm required to tweet. I'm required to keep up with that. And as Scholastic Press saw that, we thought, well, we have to mimic what we are preparing the students for. And so started to create that in a controlled setting, and really teaching the students the right way to do that. And all of these organizations not only offer teacher training, teacher support, student training, student support, they also recognize the hard work of the students, the teachers, and administrators who support them.
So now that I know you're all are very clamoring to figure out, like, how do you start your program? You're all sold, you're all on team student journalism. Your next steps are finding an advisor. So finding somebody on your staff who either is in, I guess all of these, is interested in journalism, believes in student voice, maybe has a background in journalism. I'm sure there's somebody at your school who has a communications degree or minor, or journalism degree or minor. Seeing if that person will take charge of being advisors to the student publication or student media. And then number two, I would say, is contacting the local organizations, contacting the resources that Katie mentioned, and letting them know, hey, we're starting this program. What do we need to know? How can we work together? What do you have to share with me? I'm new in this space, just really asking for what they have to help, and they will help. As someone who's been in this space a long time, you know, even though we, you know, for Teach for Chicago, we work with Chicago schools. If we get a call from Springfield, we're not going to be like, no, we're not going to help you. Of course, we're going to share the resources we have with you, because we're not going to make you recreate the wheel. So use the resources that we presented to you, see what they have available, and those are the steps you need. One thing I should have mentioned before that we probably should have in the resources slide is an organization called the Student Press Law Center. When you start doing some research into the New Voices legislation and knowing what your rights are as a principal, and student rights are as students, the Student Press Law Center will be a really great guide for you and helping you in that. So that's it for the presentation part. I believe we still have, perfect. We still have some time, maybe 10-15 minutes left to answer questions. We also want to hear from anybody who's here right now about their experience with their media programs, and maybe advice for people who want to start, or things that they wish they knew before they started their media programs. Again, I can't see the chat or who's here, so people are just going to have to ask to be unmuted, and then or type it in the chat too. But I'd love to hear more about what you wish you knew, or advice for other new programs. And even concerns, people who maybe not have programs, but concerns they have, back to the baby elephant in the room, feel free to share those. So those are, you know, this is a safe space to have those conversations.
Yes, and all you have to do is hover at the bottom of your screen to find your raise hand icon. That will let me know you're ready to talk on the mic, and I can click the button to allow you to talk. It'd be great to maybe hear from Linda Jones, who's the head of the Journalism Education Association and is on the webinar with us. So Linda, if you've got any insights, feel free to raise your hand. And I can, is Linda still, yeah, she's still in the room.
Linda has a lot of insights. She's very experienced and knowledgeable and an expert in all of these issues.
Oh, perfect. Her hand just went up. So Linda, I'm going to allow you to talk. You should be able to click on your microphone in Zoom now. You start, there we go.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Hi,
Okay.
Linda.
Hi, you guys. Good to hear you. You know, I was glad you mentioned the New Voices law, because I just came from the Journalism Education Association convention in St. Louis. Katie, you were there. Maybe you were there too, Katina?
I actually wasn't, but
Okay.
yeah.
But one of the things that struck me, I went to a session with some people from the Student Press Law Center, and it was a large probably 90 or 100 kids in the room, and they were asking about censorship that the kids were encountering. And I was struck by the fact that there were so many Illinois students who were saying that they're being censored in some fashion, and sometimes just for silly things that they and no example is coming to mind right now, but things that they can't report but are in mainstream media already. So I think if there's a way, if there's a way for administrators and teachers to be more aware of what rights students are guaranteed through the new voices, it's going to be helpful for everybody. The kids who were complaining about censorship were very unhappy with, in some cases, their advisors, in other cases with their administrators, and that's not contributing to a good atmosphere in the school district. So
I have to say, I heard about one case of censorship where an administrator wouldn't let students publish a movie review because the students didn't like the movie, but the administrator did.
Yeah,
Maybe the movie was Schindler's List or something like that, maybe, but that is not a case for censorship.
Yeah, and the examples that I encountered were silly things like that, like purely some kind of personal preference on the part of the administrator, and that that doesn't instill confidence from the students.
You're muted out, Rylan.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Linda, so much for piping in and sharing with us. That's important for us to be aware of. E-Ray said, broadcasting is an amazing idea. I'm wondering, Katie and Katina, if people are interested in that, what are some of the first steps to broadcasting some of your live school events?
I mean, I think for part of that is really, again, making it more of a not an ad hoc type of thing, like, oh, we should live stream this and making it happen, but like having it be part of the journalism program and using that, like, there's a broadcast program, but the live streaming is who's going to do this, what team it is, and what are the kind of the ethics behind it, right? If you have your IT group do it, that's one set of, like, they're just going to air it. If you have a journalism group do it, is there commentary involved? Who's responsible for it? And again, I think it was starting again with appointing, or I don't know if appointing is the right word, but appointing an advisor, a teacher on your staff who can take responsibility for it. And then that person is the one who's going to kind of deep dive into, okay, what do we need to know? What are the resources available? And how can we make this happen? The other question is to ask yourself, like, what, like, the idea is to live stream it for what? Is it for the internal school community? Is it for an external audience? Kind of those are some of the questions that you'll have to have conversation with the advisor, and how can students play a role in that?
And I would add, whenever starting a new publication at the school, is to keep in mind, are the students interested? Is there student interest and student engagement? Are there also costs? And a lot of times thankfully the technology startup to any publication, the cost could be very minimal because we have wonderful cell phones, and you can order a microphone off Amazon. We also have the Illinois Press Foundation every year awards high schools with up to $1,500 to purchase equipment for their programs. There's so many grants and opportunities. So identifying costs, but then also not letting them stop you or your students from making things happen. And really letting students run sometimes with their ideas is the best way to do it. If they want to broadcast the game, having an advisor there to guide them, but really letting them see that passion through.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Kevin's got his hand up. Kevin, I'm going to talk. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Kevin, you are on.
Okay. You guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, hello, just to piggyback off what Katie said, the district I'm in, District 201, which is right outside Chicago. We're lucky where they support, media very heavily with our students. And what we started last year and this year is, again, going off what Katie said, we kind of let students take complete charge of, we have a class called Video Tech, and they essentially promote our district plays, sporting events, clubs, and the actual teachers just tell the students, hey, here's what we want kids to know, our community to know, and just make it happen. And my God, what those kids create are incredible. It's fantastic. So that spawned into, we are actually offering a broadcast journalism class next year. So I guess the big lesson I learned over the past couple of years is, and you guys had said this in today's presentation, like, don't be afraid of just letting kids take control in terms of media and broadcasting it. Like 99 out of 100 times they produce great stuff that is, you don't have to worry about, causing problems in the community or nothing like that. Like, they are fantastic. So that's my 2 cents.
That's a
Yes,
great
thank
point,
you.
Kevin. Thank you. Also, I think the idea of starting small, right? You don't have to launch a huge journalism program. Starting small, maybe they're doing like 1 column a week or something, they're doing little pieces at a time. And one of the things I want to mention, when we talk about your media program, that could be a club, it could be a course, it could be both. Ideally, there's a course and an after-school club, because the course is when they do their learning, the club is when they get to do the leadership and the doing of it. But you don't need both. Starting with a club is a great way. Starting with a class is a great way too. Whatever kind of room there is within your schedule, but there's a lot of flexibility in it.
Yeah, and that's exactly, from my understanding, how historically in our district it started. It started with a club, and then it just compounded from there year after year. Like our local community, so outside of our school, started seeing what they were doing, and that encouraged our school board to be like, hey, we need to put more money into this. So that's exactly where it started for us.
That's great. And that brings the public recognition to your school too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, I don't see any other hands raised. If anybody's got a question, feel free to put your hand up and I can unmute your microphone. Of course, chat is always open, but I don't see any new posts in there. Katie and Katina, I want to thank you both so much for sharing your expertise with us, sharing these important examples of student media and the positive effects that it can have on students and the staff that participate. So I really appreciate you joining us for this hour. This has been terrific.
Thank you so much. And feel free to reach
Yes,
out.
thank
Our
you.
email address is on the screen. We'd love to hear from some of the participants about their programs or help them in any way.
Yes, and one thing I meant to mention earlier is one thing, if you are starting a new publication through the Journalism Education Association, there is mentoring, a 2-year mentoring program where teachers get one-on-one help. They get free membership to the Journalism Education Association and their curriculum. And it's a great way to help guide a new advisor or an advisor who's been doing it for 1 or 2 years into the world of scholastic media. So I myself have 4 mentees throughout Illinois, and we're always looking for more because it's a great way to introduce a school or an advisor to journalism. So thank you so much.
Perfect. All right, well, everyone's welcome to put their thank yous into the chat so that Katie and Katina can see that before they log out. Like I said, I'll be sending the recording out tomorrow morning along with an evaluation form that Illinois participants will want to complete, so you can get your ISB evidence of completion form and get your 1-hour professional development credit for attending our webinar today. Thank you both. Everyone is free to hover at the bottom of their screen. There'll be a big red button and you can leave the room, and I'll stop the recording.